She walked into the most elite golf club in the state, wearing thrift store khakis and carrying a canvas bag no one recognized. They laughed, whispered. One billionaire even placed a bet on how bad her swing would be. But when the simple woman stepped up to the tee, what followed silenced an entire country club and revealed a name the golf world had nearly forgotten. Before we reveal what left even the pros stunned, hit that subscribe button and tell us where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. Maggie Jensen didn't look like she belonged at Branford Ridge Golf and Polo Club. Hell, she didn't even try to. There she stood at the entrance in khakis that had faded from too many washes, not from some designer's distressed collection. Her blue polo wasn't from any pro shop, just cotton that had softened with the years. And that visor? God, it was practically a confession, with Pine Meadow Public Course stitched across it in thread that had seen more sun than most vacation homes. Her canvas bag, not those $200 staff models you see on TV, sagged on her shoulder like an old friend. The worn grips and chipped paint told stories of early mornings, not endorsement deals. Meanwhile, the Branford Ridge world floated around her like it was made of different air. Valets with white gloves whisking away Bentleys. Servers in uniforms, so pristine they looked uncomfortable offering lemon water on actual silver trays. The whole place smelled like money, that peculiar scent of people who've never worried about the price of gas. Maggie just adjusted the strap on her shoulder and walked in. The doorman did a double take. The receptionist's smile flickered when Maggie asked, "Do you have a driving range I could use?" Are you here with someone?" the girl asked, trying to sound polite but landing on patronizing. "Nope," Maggie replied, unbothered as sunshine. "Just me. Had an invitation to look around." The receptionist hesitated, glancing down at her tablet, pretending to search for confirmation. Behind her, a little cluster of 50-something men in salmon and mint polos noticed. One of them snickered. "Lost the cleaning lady already?" They laughed. Maggie didn't even blink. She spotted a map of the grounds behind the desk. "Looks like it's past the putting green," she said quietly, pointing. "Mind if I head that way?" "Ma'am, this is a private." But Maggie was already moving, not storming off like someone with something to prove, just walking with the easy rhythm of someone who'd walked plenty of fairways before. Someone who knew she belonged on grass, even if the members thought otherwise. From a second-floor window, 2 younger women with iced drinks watched her crossing toward the range. "She brought that?" one whispered, pointing at Maggie's old canvas bag. "This is gonna be good." Maggie reached the practice area, dropped her bag on the turf, and looked out across that perfect stretch of grass. Morning light spilled across it like honey. Her fingers brushed the grip of her oldest club. She hadn't come to impress anyone. She came because sometimes you just need to hit a damn ball. The men's locker room at Branford Ridge was its own little kingdom, all mahogany and leather and enough designer cologne to choke a horse. Laughter bounced off marble tile and heated towel racks. "Did you see her clubs?" snorted Carson Haynes, a hedge fund guy whose swing was about as reliable as his market predictions. "I swear I had one just like that in '84. It snapped." Cliff, Barrington III, leaned back, swirling scotch in a crystal glass at 10 a.m. like it was his job. He was tan in that year-round way that meant money, not labor. His shoulders filled out his pink polo like he paid someone to make sure they did. "Bet you $5,000 she doesn't make it past 10 balls, he drawled, eyeing the locker room TV that showed the practice range feed. 5? Carson laughed. "Make it 10. Hell, throw in that Rolex of yours." Cliff's mouth curled. "If she drives in more than 100 yards, I'll hand it over personally." No one thought he'd have to. Meanwhile, Maggie was setting her ball down on a tee. Her canvas bag slumped beside her like an old dog waiting patiently. No logos, no monogrammed towels, just clubs that had stories to tell. A couple of staff guys were watching from the edge of the range. "She doesn't look like a player," one muttered. She doesn't look like she can lift a driver, the other one chuckled. But Maggie wasn't listening. She was stretching, slowly, mindfully, rolling her shoulders, loosening her back. Not the I pay $200 an hour for a trainer kind of stretching. Just the movements that come from knowing your own body and what it needs to work right. One of the young summer interns, a lanky college kid named Liam, watched her from a distance. Something about her calm unsettled him. "She's not nervous," he said under his breath. And she wasn't. She stepped up to the ball like she was stepping up to make coffee. No hesitation, no overthinking, no ritual. Just a clean stance, a steady breath, and the kind of stillness that makes everyone else seem fidgety. Behind her, a little crowd was forming, members with their iced coffees, pretending they weren't watching. Whispers circled like mosquitoes. Is she someone's aunt? Maybe a charity case? Jesus, imagine the hand sweat on those club grips. And then Maggie reached for her driver. The jokes kept floating across the grass. The looks, the eye rolls, the comments behind manicured hands with expensive watches. But here's the thing about silence. It always gets the last word, and hers was loading. The ball sat there on the tee, just waiting. Maggie stepped up with the casual ease of a woman checking her mailbox. No drama, no practice swings. She just squared her shoulders, settled her weight, and wrapped her hands around the grip like she was holding something delicate and familiar, not a chunk of titanium and carbon fiber. Liam stood off to the side, rake in hand, curiosity in his eyes. Maggie took one slow breath and swung. Crack. The sound wasn't loud, but it was clean. The kind of contact that makes real golfers' hearts skip. No drag, no clink, no wobble. Just that perfect compression that happens maybe once a round if you're lucky. The ball took off in a rising arc, straight as a prayer, and dropped onto the turf about 180 yards out. It rolled maybe 2 more and stopped like it had manners. Liam blinked. Someone muttered, "Beginner's luck." Maggie adjusted her visor. Second ball. Same swing. Same sound. Crack. This one went even further, maybe 190. A hush started creeping over the range like fog. Third swing. Another perfect hit. Dead center. She wasn't even trying to kill it, just smooth. Like the club was just continuing the line her body started. Cliff Barrington had wandered up behind the fence, copper tumbler in hand. He raised an eyebrow. "She brought the same swing 3 times," he said, mostly to himself. "She's got rhythm," Liam whispered. It surprised him that he'd said it out loud. A few more members had gathered now. Not obviously, golf etiquette still mattered, but with that subtle, can't-help-it lean of people who know they're witnessing something they didn't expect. Brad Hollister, a former mini-tour player turned club pro, stood by the shop window, arms crossed over his chest. "She doesn't belong here," someone muttered beside him. Brad didn't answer, his eyes narrowed. He watched how Maggie reset her stance every time, exactly the same way. No fidgeting, no adjustments. Just breath, calm wrists, and a follow-through that finished in perfect balance every single time. He stepped onto the range and approached between her swings. "Excuse me," he said, keeping it casual. "I work here. Mind if I ask where you learned to swing like that?" Maggie looked up. "My father ran a course in Iowa. Nothing fancy, public. He taught veterans and kids who couldn't afford lessons." Brad nodded slowly. "He teach you about grip pressure?" "He said to hold it like a bird," Maggie smiled. "Firm enough not to let it fly away. Gentle enough not to crush it." Brad blinked. That was exactly what his old teacher used to say. Maggie turned back to the tee. 4th ball. Another laser. Brad didn't say anything else. He just walked back toward the pro shop and took off his sunglasses. "I think we've got a ghost on the range," he muttered. Maggie kept swinging. Each ball sailed with the same quiet precision, like she was placing them there deliberately. Not one slice, not one hook. Like she wasn't just playing on the course. She was having a conversation with it. Liam had given up pretending to work. He stood watching, rake forgotten at his feet, completely absorbed in the rhythm Maggie created. Her movements weren't mechanical. They were meditative. Nothing about them screamed beginner, and everything about them whispered mastery. By now, 6 members had formed a loose semicircle at the edge of the range, trying to look casual. Their whispers had changed, though. Less mocking, more curious. Think she was pro? Can't be. She'd have a sponsor bag. Look at that. Follow through, though. She's played somewhere serious. Inside the shop, Brad pulled out his phone. Not to film, but to check something. Her name. She hadn't signed the guest sheet. Odd. Most visitors signed in proudly. She just walked in and headed to the tee like it was nothing. He stepped back outside, hands on his hips, watching her 5th shot land exactly where the 4th one had. He approached again, quieter this time. "You ever play competitively?" He asked, watching her line up another shot. Maggie didn't turn. "A long time ago," she said. "College circuit, some amateur tournaments. That was... before." "Before what?" He didn't ask. He didn't need to. "You've got tempo like Ernie Els," he murmured. "Old school," Maggie chuckled. "My dad always said a swing is like a song. You don't rush a good chorus." That made Brad smile. He sounds like someone I would have loved to meet. He had strong opinions about grip tape and weak ones about politics. Mostly taught me to listen. "To the club?" Brad asked. "No," she said softly. "To the grass." That answer stopped him. Nobody talked like that anymore. Not even the old pros. Behind them, Cliff leaned against a white chair, arms folded, sipping what looked like another mimosa. His eyes narrowed. "This ought to be fun," he muttered to his buddy. "She's got swing, but let's see if she's got game." He stood up and brushed invisible dust from his palms. "I think it's time we gave Grandma a real hole to play." Cliff Barrington had the air of a man who'd never been outdriven except in his nightmares. He clapped his hands once, loudly, drawing everyone's attention. "All right," he announced with a too-wide smile. "Looks like someone's been eating her Wheaties." Maggie turned slightly, not startled, not smiling either, just watchful. Cliff strolled over, his Italian loafers crunching on the gravel path. "Name's Cliff. You've got a hell of a swing, ma'am." "Maggie," she replied. "Nice to meet you." "Well, Maggie," he said, stretching her name out like he was testing it, "since you've warmed up the range and turned half my club into spectators, how about a little fun?" Maggie looked down at her tee. "What kind of fun?" Cliff gestured toward the golf carts nearby. "One hole. Just one. Closest to the pin on number 8. Par 3, 163 yards. Water left, bunker right. Simple, quick. Think of it as an exhibition." Maggie studied him. "And what happens if I win?" A ripple of laughter spread through the onlookers. Cliff grinned. "If, by some miracle of the golf gods, you get closer than I do, I'll give you this." He unstrapped his Rolex, held it up. The gold caught the morning sun like a wink. Maggie tilted her head, amused. "That's a nice watch." "Then, I guess you'll try to win it." Brad stepped closer. "Cliff, maybe take it down a notch. This isn't—" "She agreed, didn't she?" Cliff cut in. "You agreed, right?" Maggie measured him with her eyes, then nodded. "I did now." The assistant pro quickly organized carts. "Let's head to the 8th, he said, trying to manage the growing crowd with at least a pretense of decorum. Phones were coming out now. Discreetly, of course. These were country club folks, after all. But already the air had that electric feeling that comes before something worth watching. As Maggie climbed into the cart next to Brad, he glanced over and lowered his voice. "You don't have to prove anything." She gave him a soft smile. "I'm not." They drove in silence, the perfect greens blurring past. From a distance, it probably looked like some charity exhibition, one of those feel-good stunts that clubs do to entertain themselves. But up close, you could feel it. Something was shifting. The air itself seemed to be holding its breath, and Maggie, she just sat there, hands resting on her thrifted canvas bag, looking out at the course like she was seeing an old friend she hadn't visited in a long time. The 8th hole at Brantford Ridge was their showpiece, a par 3 carved into the mountain slope of a gentle ridge, overlooking a man-made lake dotted with water lilies and the occasional swan. The green looked like an island, framed by a nasty bunker on the right, and a crosswind that fooled even members who'd played it 100 times. A semicircle of golf carts and chairs had already formed by the time Maggie stepped out. The crowd had doubled, staff, members, even off-duty caddies, all orbiting the moment with that mix of skepticism and curiosity you only get at exclusive clubs. Cliff took his sweet time. He posed at the tee box like he was shooting a golf magazine cover, tossing his ball once before placing it. He stretched, adjusted his grip like a man about to split the atom. He swung. The ball sliced slightly right, decent distance, but a bad bounce kicked it off the green, down a slope toward the first cut of rough. Polite applause followed, a few murmurs too. "Still better than most of us," someone offered. Cliff turned and gave everyone a theatrical shrug. "Pressure makes diamonds," he called out. Maggie walked up without fanfare. She took exactly one practice swing, then stepped to the tee with her oldest 5-iron. No dramatics, no fidgeting, just breath, balance, and that bone-deep familiarity that can't be bought. The breeze tugged at her visor. She let it tell her something. Then, crack. The ball lifted off like it had been waiting all morning for this moment. It didn't so much cut through the air as float on it, rising in a high, clean arc that caught the sunlight like a promise. Time seemed to slow down. It carried across the water with eerie calm. No spin, no drift, just purpose. It landed 5 feet left of the pin, checked once, and settled without drama, like it had planned to stop there all along. The silence was absolute. Then, gasps, murmurs of "no way," and "did you see that?" and "one that was dirty" from a younger member. Brad just stared, lips slightly parted. He'd seen pros miss that shot for years. She'd played it like she'd designed the hole herself. Even Cliff, to his credit, didn't speak. His eyes followed the ball, his smile frozen somewhere between showmanship and wounded pride. The club president, Harold Whitmore, arrived right as someone was replaying it on their phone. He glanced at the green, then at Maggie, then at Brad. "Who the hell is she?" he asked under his breath. Brad didn't answer. Liam, the intern, did. "She's someone who doesn't miss." Maggie looked across the water, hands resting on her club like a walking stick. She wasn't gloating. Didn't raise her arms or pump a fist. Didn't even smile big. She just nodded at the green. "Nice pin position," she said quietly. More to the course than to anyone there. And for the first time all morning, nobody laughed. Because they all understood. They weren't watching a joke anymore. They were watching something the game hadn't seen in years. Club president Harold Whitmore stepped closer to Maggie, studying her face like he was trying to remember a dream. "Excuse me," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Harold, president of the club. I don't believe we've met?" Maggie shook his hand. "Margaret Jensen." Something flickered behind Harold's eyes. "Wait," he said slowly. "Jensen. As in Maggie J?" That Name rippled through the crowd. Cliff frowned. Who's Maggie J? One of the older members, a semi-retired orthopedic surgeon named Blake, let out a small gasp. No way, he said, turning to Harold. That Maggie J from Golf Digest, the Fairway Whisperer? Harold was already pulling out his phone. He tapped and scrolled frantically, then turned the screen toward Brad. There she was, a black and white photo from 1983, early 20s, same face, different time, holding a trophy the size of a small child, standing beside two stunned-looking men in PGA polos. Maggie J. Jensen, Midwest Amateur Champion, twice. Brad's eyebrows shot up. You beat two touring pros in that charity shootout in '84, he murmured, the memory clicking into place. They called you the most accurate woman in amateur golf. Maggie smiled faintly. They called me a lot of things. Cliff stepped forward, suddenly looking like someone had let the air out of him. Why didn't you say anything? I didn't come here to impress anyone, she said. I came to hit balls. I've been away from the game a long time. Harold was still, scrolling. Says here you walked away after qualifying for the U.S. Women's Open in '85. What happened? My mother got sick, Maggie said simply. My dad was gone by then. Someone had to stay. And later, well, life happens. A beat of silence followed. Not awkward, respectful. One of the young women in the crowd, maybe 20, whispered to her friend, She's literally a legend. And they laughed at her shoes. Phones were up again, but not for mockery now, for proof, for witnessing. Cliff took off his Rolex, his cocky grin long gone. I believe this is yours. Maggie looked at it, then at him. Keep it, she said. You'll remember the moment better without it. Cliff nodded, understanding something he couldn't quite put into words. The crowd began to shift, less gawking, more gravitating. A few younger members approached shyly. One asked, Do you ever teach? Maggie hesitated. Not formally, but maybe. You could? Maggie looked out at the range, then down at her hands. I'll think about it, she said, and with that, she picked up her canvas bag and walked off the green as calmly as she'd walked onto it. Only now, the entire club was watching her go, for all the right reasons. Maggie didn't come back the next day or the day after that, but her name did. By midweek, someone had taped up a printed article from Golf Digest's archives inside the pro shop window. The Fairway Whisperer, Margaret Jensen's magical short game. Members started stopping to read it, some out of curiosity, others out of quiet embarrassment. Even the ones who'd laughed loudest now lowered their voices when her name came up. Liam, the intern, took it upon himself to reorganize the practice range schedule. He wrote, Reserved, 7:30 to 9 a.m. every morning on a whiteboard. No explanation. Just a time block. Brad noticed. She say she was coming back? No, Liam said, but just in case. By Thursday, Brad found himself rewatching footage someone had uploaded online. It wasn't even titled dramatically, just, Woman hits perfect shot at Branford Ridge. But the views were climbing. And more importantly, the comments were different. From the usual internet snark, who is she? That swing is unreal. This is why you treat everyone with respect. The club's atmosphere had started to change. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even discussed openly. But something about Maggie's presence, or maybe the silence she left behind, lingered. People started teeing off with less peacocking and more concentration. A few even dusted off their old clubs, the ones they'd abandoned for newer, flashier models. Brad caught Cliff one morning practicing at the range, alone. No entourage, no jokes. He hit 3 balls. None were perfect. but he reset his stance. After each one, quieter than usual. Maggie finally returned on Saturday. She arrived just before sunrise when the sky was still blushing like a first date. No fanfare, no audience, just her canvas bag, her faded visor, and that same unshakable calm. Brad met her at the edge of the green. "Didn't think we'd see you again." Maggie shrugged. "Didn't think I'd miss it." He nodded. "I blocked off your usual spot." "I saw." She set her bag down, pulled out a wedge, and walked toward the chipping area. Brad started to follow, then paused. "Hey, if you ever wanted to run a clinic here, I'd clear the whole schedule." Maggie smiled gently. "I don't need a schedule, Brad." She turned back toward the turf, tossed a ball onto the grass, and chipped it with one fluid motion. The ball dropped into the cup like it was answering a call. Behind them, someone let out a slow whistle. The range had gone quiet again. But this time, it wasn't because they doubted her. It was because they believed. The following week, a new sign appeared on the Branford Ridge bulletin board. Simple white cardstock, pinned beside the weekly tea time sheet. Short game fundamentals with Maggie Jensen, Sundays at 7 a.m. Limit 6 players. All skill levels welcome. First, come, first served. Fee, none, just show up ready to learn. The first Sunday, all 6 spots were claimed before the clubhouse even unlocked. 2 junior members, 1 retiree, a former college golfer trying to rebuild her swing after injury, and, most surprisingly, Cliff Barrington. He showed up quietly. No Rolex, no flask, no loud jokes. Just a borrowed notepad and a beginner's humility. Maggie didn't bring handouts. No whistle, no clipboard. Just a bucket of balls and a voice so steady it made the grass seem quieter. She didn't talk about distance. She talked about feel. "Most people think golf is about power," she said, kneeling beside a teen named Riley who kept topping her chips. "It's really about listening, not to people, to your own tempo, your own hands." Riley nodded, trying again. Maggie stopped her mid-swing. "Your hands are rushing," she said gently. "They're trying to finish before the ball's even gone. Don't play like you're escaping something. Play like you're arriving." On her next attempt, Riley hit it clean. The ball popped up, landed soft, and rolled to within a few feet of the pin. Her face lit up like Christmas morning. From the fringe, Cliff watched closely, his usual swagger replaced with something that looked almost like hunger. Later, during a break, he approached Maggie with an awkward smile. "I've been playing this game for 20 years, and I've never hit a chip shot like that kid just did." "You've been hitting the game," she replied quietly. "Maybe now you'll start playing it." Cliff didn't get offended. He just nodded, like someone who'd been waiting a long time to hear exactly that. Word spread fast. Within 2 weeks, they had to add more sessions. Maggie never took a dime. She said she'd rather teach 6 people who wanted to listen than 60, who just wanted something to post about. But what surprised her most were the notes. Folded papers left at the clubhouse. Emails forwarded by Brad. Messages passed through Liam. From women who'd quit the game after being mocked. From girls who'd never seen someone like Maggie swing with such quiet authority. From men, too. Ones who realized they'd spent decades playing golf without ever really understanding it. She read them late at night, over peppermint tea, sitting by the window of her small apartment. She didn't write back. She just showed up, the next Sunday, because sometimes the reply is in the doing, and Maggie Jensen had decided it was time to speak through the game again. The footage from Maggie's first day never made the evening news. It wasn't flashy enough. No arguments, no viral stunts, no $1 million brand deals. But in the corners of the internet where golf was still about the game and not the gear, it lived. A woman in secondhand clothes walks onto an elite practice green, gets laughed at, and answers only with her swing. Clean. Repeated. Unmistakable. Brad eventually added a line to the bulletin board below her class notice. Just a quote, in thin black ink. You can't buy tempo. You can only earn it. Maggie never told anyone how many times she'd walked away from the game over the years. How many swings she'd practiced alone, not knowing if they still mattered. How often she'd wondered whether the world had already moved on without her. But standing beside a new group of students, some bright-eyed, some weathered, she realized it didn't matter. She hadn't come back for validation. She'd come back because she still had the swing, and when you've got the swing, you've always got something worth showing. On a crisp Wednesday morning, Maggie stood at the edge of the 8th hole again, watching a young woman line up her shot. Same water hazard, same pin. She leaned over and said, "Don't aim for the flag. Listen to what the slope's telling you. Let the ball follow your breath." The girl hit it. Soft arc, gentle bounce. Stopped 6 feet from the pin. She turned to Maggie, wide-eyed. "How did you know it would land there?" Maggie smiled, the kind of smile that comes from remembering 1,000 quiet mornings just like this one. "I didn't," she said, "but my hands did." Have you ever seen someone be underestimated, only to turn the whole room silent with one quiet, undeniable act of skill? Or maybe you've been that person. Laughed at, dismissed, only to prove them all wrong with your talent, your heart, or your sheer persistence. Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one, and I'd love to hear from you. If Maggie's journey touched something in you, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you don't miss tomorrow's story. Share this with someone who deserves to be seen for who they really are. And while you're here, check out one of the videos popping up on your screen now. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place.